I'm calling it decision weekend in the SEC, and this one between Georgia and Ole Miss is one of two ranked on ranked matchups, so a lot to be decided. And here to help us break down one of the biggest games of the weekend, we've got Jordan Hill from Dogs 24/7 and David Johnson from Inside the Rebels. Let me tell you a little bit more about this matchup between these two squads. It's the 48th meeting, and I gotta be honest, Georgia kind of dominates this series and dominates in the month of November. They won 15 straight games in November, which is the best streak in FBS. But Ole Miss, they have some FBS leading numbers of their own. They've got yards per play and passing yards per game leading the way in the country. But let's start on the other side of things with Carson Beck. Not good news with him. 11 interceptions this season, and they've all come in the last 5 games. So, Jordan, I'm sure there's a better way of asking this, but I'll just keep it simple. What's going on with Beck?
I think that's the biggest question for not only Georgia fans, but Kirby Smart and this coaching staff. You look at his performance in that Florida game, 2 interceptions in the first half, another in the third quarter, back-to-back games with 3 interceptions. And I think the hardest thing to understand with Carson when it came to that Florida game was just exactly what he was seeing. He was forcing on those first 2 throws, especially forcing throws into coverage, trying to make something happen, especially in situations where it didn't have to be that way. Now, I give Carson a lot of credit. We talked to him after the Florida game, and he owned it, said, I got to play better. I can't make these kind of mistakes. And, something Kirby Smart also talked about, the fact that these are catastrophic mistakes, which is how Kirby described them, and the fact that a lot of these have come on first down. These aren't situations where Georgia absolutely has to have a play. I think it's a situation where you look at Georgia and Carson going into this game in Oxford that, he has struggled on the road during his time as a starting quarterback for the Bulldogs. Really, the only good road start he's had in his career was last November at Tennessee. When you look at true road games, not including some of these neutral site openers, not including the game in Jacksonville, 9 touchdowns, 9 interceptions in true road games over the last 2 years. So Carson's got a lot to prove. He's a better quarterback than he showed in Jacksonville on Saturday. Played really well in the second half, and I think that's what makes things so hard to understand. But I do think Carson is capable of bouncing back. He's going to have to do it Saturday if Georgia's going to have a chance of winning this thing.
We've seen it before. That's what makes it so perplexing. We know it's in him. We've seen it this season, last season. We have seen it. Meanwhile, I know that Ole Miss fans would love to get wide receiver Trey Harris back for this game. So, David, what are you hearing as far as his potential availability?
Yeah, we think Harris is going to play Saturday. Likely why he did not play last week in the blowout win at Arkansas was because of this Georgia game. You want to make sure that he's 100% healthy. And he's Jackson Dart's top target. He's one of the top wide receivers in the country, leads the nation in receiving yards. And up until Saturday, he was the thing that made the Ole Miss offense tick. Now, Saturday, they moved Jordan Wilkins out to the outside, and Wilkins had a huge game, and Dart connected with him very well as threw the ball to the tight end, which is something Ole Miss had not done for the last couple of weeks. So Trey Harris, I look for him to play on Saturday. I think he will be a factor, and good luck covering him.
Best of luck. We'll talk about that right now. We're going to look at some matchups, starting with this Ole Miss offense that is hoping to get Harris back versus the Georgia defense that is trying to find a way to stop him if he does come back. So, David, how can this offense better set up Jackson Dart for success with or without Trey Harris?
Yeah, it all starts with their passing game. They're going to have to protect him up front. And I don't know if Ole Miss is capable of doing that against the Georgia defensive front. As far as a ground game goes, Henry Parrish was injured last week, will not play Saturday. And he was Ole Miss's leading rusher, their starting tailback. So now you're down to Dominique Thomas, who transferred in from Georgia State, and Matt Jones, a one-time walk-on at the program. So I'm not really thinking Ole Miss is going to be able to push Georgia's defensive front around, but they must protect Jackson Dart, period, and get the ball out. He's got to distribute the football well. He's had a tendency to focus primarily on Trey Harris. Wasn't able to do that last week, came through with flying colors. So I think that's what they have to do. They've got to keep his jersey clean Saturday and he's got to distribute the ball to multiple receivers.
Yeah, I mean, David hit on the biggest thing that I look at, even from the Georgia perspective. It's getting after Jackson Dart. You look at 2 games ago for Georgia, the way they got after Quinn Ewers and that Texas offense, 10 tackles for loss, 7 sacks. And you really didn't see that replicated against Florida. Now, I think Georgia might have gone a little bit more conservative once DJ Lagway got hurt and Aiden Warner, the backup, comes in. But the pass rush was just sort of lacking. And, I look at a great example of affecting this Ole Miss offense. It was the way LSU played and got after Jackson Dart, did not hesitate to be aggressive and get after him. I think that Georgia's pass rushers, guys like Michael Williams, Jalen Walker, they're going to have another big game, try to replicate or get as close as they can what they did against Texas. And then the other thing is just trying to limit those explosive plays. Kirby Smart talked about it earlier this week, and he compared putting up Ole Miss's explosive plays this season to a slot machine. Like, it just keeps rolling, all the different explosive plays they've been able to generate. Obviously, if they get Trey Harris back, that's going to help in that regard. Georgia's secondary's been a little bit lax when it comes to preventing those plays. I think about the touchdown pass DJ Lagway did have to Aiden Mizell in that game against Florida. It was a huge play coming off of a Carson Beck turnover. Georgia's going to have to limit those explosive plays if they're going to have a chance on the road.
When you think of Lane Kiffin, you think of explosive plays, so that's certainly something top of mind. On the other side, we got Georgia offense versus Ole Miss defense, and Jordan, with all the questions we talked about with Beck's play, you don't know what you're going to get from him, so what should the focus on offense be for this game?
Well, I think if they can just kind of get him eased into this game would be a good start. And part of the thing that's going to complicate that is the status of Trevor Etienne, who suffered a rib injury in that game against Florida, left in the second quarter. Now, based on everything we've heard to date, I do think he's going to play. He's been practicing this week dealing with wearing a non-contact jersey during practice to get ready for Ole Miss. But getting Trevor Etienne involved, getting Nate Frazier, who had a big game in that Florida game, in place of Trevor Etienne, I think that's big. Mike Bobo, the offensive coordinator, did a very good job after Carson Beck's third interception of trying to give him just easy plays to sort of settle back in. Jet sweeps, getting guys open, screens, ways to simplify the offense and just get Carson Beck feeling good. So I think if you do that, if you can get those running backs involved, even if it's throwing to them out of the backfield, I think that's huge. And just building confidence, it's not going to be easy. I know Ole Miss fans are going to be fired up for this game. But Carson, getting him comfortable, I think, especially early in this game, I think it can go a long way in Georgia getting a big road win.
Yeah, Jordan said Ole Miss fans are going to be fired up. They realize their entire season is on the line. If you go back into the summertime and you talk to the players, it was playoffs or bust. And they have to win this game, and they know it. Now, Ole Miss is going to counter with the best defense money bought over the portal season, right? I mean, when you talk about their defensive line, Walter Nolan, a midseason All-American, Jared Ivey, Princely Umamielen, Pupal, the linebacker transfer from Arkansas. There's a reason Ole Miss leads the nation in sacks. So this is not only going to be a task for the Ole Miss offensive line, it's going to be proving grounds for the Ole Miss defensive line against the Georgia offensive line that is one of the best ones they will have faced all year. And whether that's a testament to Georgia or a criticism of Ole Miss's schedule, that's just the facts. And, I think that's where the game's going to come down to. It's going to come down to the line of scrimmage and which quarterback has the most time to operate and do their thing. And at the end of the day, we're going to have a winner, and we're going to have somebody that's not.
Someone that is not very happy. Yes, a lot of stakes in this game for sure. We simulated this game 20 times on EA College Football 25, the video game, and Georgia eking out the win 11 of those 20 times. So for each team, let's start with the Dogs here. Jordan, what's the biggest key to pulling out a win in the real game on Saturday?
Well, it's kind of simple because it's been a big part of this conversation, but it's just taking care of the football. I mean, for Carson Beck, he had 4 turnovers in that Alabama game. That's when you also include a fumble that he had. He had 3 against Florida. He has to take care of the ball. And I think that pass rush for Ole Miss, they're going to try to make life difficult on him. So not only seeing Carson come through in that regard, but having secured catches, I think you've seen Georgia's receivers slowly but surely become more consistent and just find ways to keep drives alive, not give the ball away. I think that's big. And then on the other side for the Georgia defense, again, just limiting explosives, even continuing what has been a nice pattern as far as sure tackles. This is a defense that struggled when it came to missed tackles early in the season. Very uncharacteristic for a Kirby Smart defense. They've improved on that front, but I think they got to do that again on Saturday. Not allow Ole Miss to extend those drives, get off the field on third downs, and I think they'll be in good shape.
Yeah, we don't have a big stadium in Oxford. It seats officially 64,038 people. I've been told they're going to squeeze 70,000 into the vault on Saturday. Ole Miss has to strike early and keep the crowd involved. They've got to utilize home field advantage. Lane Kiffin doesn't lose often in Oxford. Big win over LSU here last year. This game is even bigger than that one. And Lane's been criticized at times about not being able to win the big game. He won it in Oxford last year, and this is it for this year. I mean, this is his opportunity to go out and win the big game. And but Ole Miss has to score early and keep the crowd involved. If the students are leaving at halftime, Georgia's probably going to win. If they're back in the third and fourth quarters, this is going to be a ball game.
Checking the weather right now. It looks like it's going to be a little toasty, shoving 70,000 in that stadium in the middle of the day on Saturday, but maybe some rain. I don't know. I'm not a meteorologist, but that sounds like it's going to be a fun atmosphere. Thank you both so much for the great breakdowns. We appreciate it. Keep it locked in to Dogs 24/7 for all things Georgia football and Inside the Rebels for everything you need to know about Ole Miss. The two you just heard from, their whole crews, they've got you covered.